welcome to my monthly roundup video for January, the first video of its kind. I am Helen, as I'm sure most of you know. I am the dyer behind Giddy Yarns, and I am the host of the Giddy Knits podcast here on this YouTube channel. And this is a new series of videos. I'll be putting up one each month at the end of the month, and they're basically going to be a roundup of the month. So we're going to look at various things about January. I'm going to start off with finished objects, so what projects I finished in January. We'll have a little look at how well I did with the goals that I set myself in January. I'm then going to set a few goals for February in terms of my kind of knitting and crochet goals, basically. I'm then going to talk about a couple of other crafts and things that I would like to do a little bit more on in February, and kind of how much or what I've done of them during January. And then I'm going to finish up with slightly different. I'm going to finish up with books and what books I've read during the month of January as well, because I enjoy seeing what other people have been reading, and I know a number of you out there have said that you've enjoyed seeing what I've been reading, so I thought I would incorporate that into the monthly roundup video. Notes and everything on where to find me will be available down underneath the video, so all of the links to where you can find me on social media, my website, everything like that is down underneath the video. I will also do some basic show notes with names of patterns and things like that I'm talking about. I won't link because it is time consuming, and also with some of the knitting patterns and things, there's difficulties with linking to Ravelry for people who have issues accessing Ravelry, but I will just make sure it's there. And to be honest, most of the time you can just stick the name into Google quickly and it will come up nice and easily. If you have any problems, then just send me a message and I'll get you a link. But yeah, so links to all of those down below. I think that's everything. So, should we get into it then? It feels weird doing a new video. I don't have my routine established for this video. But I thought we'd start off with finished objects and what things I finished during January. So I finished 2 projects in January. The first one I finished is my Storm's End cowl, which is this gorgeous cowl here. This is my own pattern, which has now been released on my website. Well, it's been released on Payhip, but you can access it through my website nice and easily. And it is just such a fun, simple cowl pattern. It's just knits and pearls in the rounds, but the pearl sections create a lovely little colour fade when you're using minis to make it. And I'm just so pleased with it. That's not great, is it? And I'm just so pleased with how the combination of the colours and also the pattern worked. I'm so ecstatic with this. I can't even describe how pleased I am with it. It makes me very, very, very happy. The yarn that I used for this one is, again, this is my yarn, so this is Giddy Yarns. These were the colours that were originally released for the 12 Days of Christmas boxes, but they're now available in the wild as such. And you can actually pre-order the mini sets on my website at the moment up until, oh, I've forgotten when I said you could pre-order them till, up until the 7th of February, I think, something like that. It's all in the listing there. But yeah, I'm so pleased with this cowl. I love it so much. The second finished object is a pair of socks, my first pair of socks for the year, and it is this lovely pair here. These are just plain vanilla socks, so they're just knit in the round the whole way. There's no added pattern to them. I used an ancient Giddy Yarns colourway. This was my Christmas Morning Chaos colourway, which I first dyed up back in Christmas, November probably, goodness knows quite which month, 2017, and it was the first ever Christmas colourway that I think I released for my shop, and it's sat in my stash ever since, and I've not knit it, and it finally needed to come out and it deserved to be knit up, and I'm so glad I did because I love it, and it was so fun seeing how it all kind of micro striped up. But yeah, my first pair of socks. And what I do, which if you're regular to my podcast and things, you'll know this because I talk about it all the time. But what I do with my socks is I tend to, whenever I finish a pair of socks during the year, they get tucked away in a box in my bedroom. And then at the beginning of December, I will open up that box and I will have a box of socks to gift myself for December and the remaining winter and, well, whenever I'm wearing hand knit socks, basically. So these won't get worn until the end of the year. They will get tucked away. And I will open them up again and have that pleasure of discovering them again in December, which is always really good fun. But yeah, 2 projects finished in January. So not as much as I was hoping, which leads us on to how I did with my January goals. So my January goals, I've forgotten what they were already, which is not good, is it? I'm just looking actually back in my show notes and whether I made a note. I probably didn't. No, cool. I need to think that through in future. So I'm pretty sure my January goals, I wanted to get this pair of socks finished, which I did manage. I wanted to get this cowl finished, which I also managed. And then the third thing that I really wanted to get finished during January, which was a challenge, and I didn't succeed in that sense, was my Advent wrap. Which is this one here. It's the Cupid's Arrow wrap, which is a pattern by Ellie at Craft House Magic. And I'm knitting it out of Spectrum Fibres yarn from her 2020 Advent calendar. So it started with the purples and then I've got a nice big pink section and I'm moving into yellows now. So I didn't get this finished in January, but that's fine because the point of setting the goals is not to add pressure to get things finished, but more to try and just direct me when I'm picking projects, because sometimes I've got quite a few works in progress and sometimes I'll sit down in an evening and I will just get a moment of kind of, I don't know what to work on. I can't decide what to work on. I don't know what project to pick up. And I feel like having goals each month will give me an idea as to what to pick up, because I'll be able to sit there and think to myself, actually, it's February, still February. I wanted to get these things finished in February, so I'm going to pick up one of those projects rather than getting distracted by kind of longer term projects or shiny new things, which, I mean, come on, I'm going to get distracted by shiny new things anyway, but just to give me a bit of focus, let's go with that. But they're not high pressure. If I don't make them, I don't make them. It's not a big issue. So yeah, they're not too bad. It was a relatively simple set of January goals. And I think February is going to be interesting because I have set some more goals for February. So let's move on to February's goals. So February's goals, to start with, this is going on my February's goals because I still want to keep working on it. I really want to get it done, and I will just move it a month in the goals structure. I don't really know what I'm saying. And this is now one of my February goals, is to get this finished. I'm currently on colour number, let's work it out, shall we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I think I've just started colour number 15 of 24. So it's not unfeasible that I could get this finished during February. February is obviously a shorter month, so we'll see how it goes. But this is one of my priorities for trying to get finished this month. The other things I would like to get finished this month are my colour of the month sock for my husband, Tom. I am knitting him odd socks throughout the year. And basically each month I'm going to be releasing a new colour of the month colourway, and each month I'm going to take one out of the shop and I'm going to knit him a single sock. And then hopefully at the end of the year he'll have 6 pairs of single socks, so he can wear odd socks however he wants. I don't imagine that I'll actually keep up with this. I imagine I will still be knitting them into next year, but I would like to get this one finished in February. because I'm doing pretty well. I mean, I've added the heel. I've added the heel in, so all I need to do is get the foot done. And realistically, one single sock a month should be feasible, but we all know how easily I get distracted. So we'll see. But that is the second thing I would like to get finished during February. I would also like to finish another pair of socks. I'd like to finish my Yuletide socks because, again, they're a Christmas project, and it would be nice to get them done sort of at least during the first half of the year. I've just put the heel into the first sock of these, so I do have a second sock that I need to knit, and they are a pattern sock, so that is going to be a little bit more challenging, but it should be achievable. These are the Yuletide socks, as I said, and the pattern is by Suzanne of Green Lambkin Yarns, and it's a gorgeous kind of lace and faux cable pattern down the front. It's a relatively simple pattern. It's a 4-row repeat, and actually 2 of those rows are only knits and purls, so it is actually a really simple pattern. I've also modified the pattern so that I'm not doing the pattern on the back of the leg, which will have made it go a little bit quicker. Obviously you wouldn't normally do the pattern on the bottom of the foot anyway, so actually now I've got to the foot, it's just the same as the leg has been. But yeah, I would like to get these finished in February. There are 2 other things that I would also like to attempt to finish in February, and this is where my goal setting gets a little bit ambitious. So I would quite like to finish another block for my colour therapy blanket. If you're a regular viewer of the podcast, you'll know that I've been making a blanket. This is the Stitch in Time blanket pattern by Kay Jones of the Bakery Bears. And it uses mitered squares, and each block is 9 mitered squares, and then you border them and join them all together. And I've been making a blanket using minis from the Henny Penny Makes Colour Therapy Club. And I would quite like to finish a block this month. Now, I'm only that far into a block, so it's one of those things. I mean, when I sit down and do this, it's quite quick, but yeah, I think this is one of my less likely to achieve goals, but we'll see. If I don't put it on there, then I won't even try. Whereas if I put it on there, then it will remind me to do it, and it will motivate me, hopefully, to pick it up and to carry on. I'm currently working on the turquoise box, and each month you get 10 little scrappy bobbins. I've been taking one of the semi-solid ones out to make some scrappy socks at the end of the year, and yeah, these are all the colours that go into this block, and I'm hopefully carrying on with the Colour Therapy Club this year, so I should have at least 24 blocks at some point in the future, not by the end of this year, but that's the plan. That's the plan. So I would like to try and get another block knit for the Colour Therapy blanket. And then there's another one. And this fits in with the make-along that I'm currently running as part of the podcast. The other thing I would quite like to get finished this month is my Advent gnome. And they are such quick knits, there's really no excuse to not finish it, but I didn't get very far during December because it was a very busy month. I managed to knit this little part of the Advent gnome, this little basket. If my camera would focus, you'd be able to see it. There we go. I did get this little basket knit. And I have now seen spoilers of the gnome, so I now know what these bits are for. So I've also got the little straps for the backpack, they're all knit, and I started knitting the hat. So I have started knitting the hat, but I just need to pick it up more often and carry on with it. And I would like to try and get this finished because the make-along that I'm running as part of my podcast is a mini make-along for February. So the idea is that you have to knit projects that only use mini skeins. And this gnomes are perfect for it because I'm using 3 20-gram mini skeins to knit it. So it fits with the rules for the make-along. and it would be nice to get another gnome done. I don't know if you can see, actually, all my gnomes currently just live up here on top of our games unit, along with a random sock and some COVID tests, because that's life, isn't it? The random sock, there's a funny story behind. My mum sent it to us because we stayed with my parents for Christmas, and she sent us a parcel with a few bits and pieces that we'd forgotten, one of the kids' teddy bears and that kind of thing, and also this random sock that doesn't belong to me, doesn't belong to Tom, doesn't belong to any of the kids. I messaged my brother and sent him a photo because he was also staying with us, my parents, over Christmas. Doesn't belong to him either. So I think that my mother has managed to send me a sock that belongs to my dad and just not known about it. So we have a random sock that I now need to send back to my mum because it's not any of ours, but she's posted it to us anyway. So yeah, that is all my knitting goals for February. I would like to finish my Advent wrap. I would like to finish a gnome. I would like to finish my Yuletide socks. I'd like to finish Tom's sock. And I'd also like to get a colour therapy block done. That is 5 projects. So it is an ambitious goal for such a small month. But as I said, the goals are not high pressure. If I don't succeed in finishing them, then it's not a big issue. It's more of a motivational tool to try and encourage me to work on those projects. The other thing, so that's all of the knitting. It's all knitting. It's all knitting, isn't it? There's no crochet bits in there this month. But the other crafts that I would also like to get a little bit more done on are, let's sort them out. I've put them places and now I can't remember. First of all, I would like to get my knitting journal updated. So this is my knitting journal. It's just a little notebook. I think it came from Debenhams. Tom bought it for me for Christmas one year. It's just a simple lined notebook. It does have kind of fancy gold pages, which is very nice. And I started this back at the beginning of 2021 with my knitting goals in there. And it was relatively simple, the way I'd filled it in. And then last year I decided to get a bit fancier with it. So I started making the pages a bit more scrapbooky, which I've been really, really enjoying. And I've slowly been filling them in and updating them, adding photos, and all of the projects that I finish get a photo added into this. You can see one of the gnomes I finished there. But I've not been very good at keeping up to date with it. So I'm still behind a little bit. I've got one project I've got one project. Oh yes, yeah, I've done the lichen socks. I've got one project from last year that needs to go in on this page, which is the original version of this cowl that I knit using scraps of various minis in just a brighter rainbow. So I need to do a page for that. I then have a section for 2022 as a little page break to kind of move into the next year. And I now need to start filling in the pages for this year for the projects I finished. So obviously these 2 projects that have been finished in January, I need to get photos and pages put into my knitting journal. So I would like to try and keep up to date with this a little bit more. And I'd like to get those ones filled in during February to kind of catch myself up a little bit. So that's that one. This is one of those annoying books where the sticker didn't come off properly on the back, so I've now got a really ugly stickery bit on the back, which is annoying. At some point I will have to try and sit down and get it off, but that is that one. The other thing I would really like to get a bit more done on is my cross stitch, which I've shared recently because I have done a fair bit on my cross stitch in January. But I'm currently working on a cross stitch that is going to be in our bedroom. This will eventually, it's got floral patterns all around the outside, and then eventually it will have a scroll in the middle that says, and they lived happily ever after. It's quite a large cross stitch project. So I want to get more done on it, but I'm also realistic that cross stitch takes time. But I'm working on it slowly. So this I'd like to get a bit more done on. I'm not setting any particular goals for how much I'd like to get done on it, but I would like to just get a bit more done on it, basically. I'd like to see some significant progress, but I don't have any specific goals as to how much that has to be. The other thing I would like to try and do, or at least get started, excuse the crinkling, the other thing I would like to try and get started is a new bobbin on my e-spinner. I have a little electric eel nano, which I haven't brought over, it's still living on the shelf, and I finished this bobbin at the end of last year, which is just a spin of a really random mix of, it's this little, is it a bat? I'm very new to spinning and terminology still stumps me quite often. So I've got this, which was a sample that came with a learn to spin set for a drop spindle that I had. And it didn't have any information of what's in it, but it's got sparkly stuff in it, it's got merino in it, it's got lots of colours in it, it's really bright and colourful, and I'm just doing it as kind of my first proper spin on the electric eel, and then I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm probably going to apply them together, and I might start a blanket of some kind, something that doesn't matter too much about the fact that the yarn's going to be bobbly and all over the place. But I finished the first bobbin at the end of last year, which is really fun and colourful, and I really enjoyed it. And what I would like to do in February is just start the next bobbin. I don't want to finish it, I don't want to spin a whole bobbin, I'm not setting that as a goal, but I would like to just get it started, because I've kind of stumped myself slightly because I finished a bobbin and I can't remember how to start the next one. So I need to go back and look at the instruction video and work out how to restart on the next bobbin. So yeah, that's one of the things I'd like to do, is just start the next bobbin with this. So yeah, they're the other crafts that I would like to do bits and pieces on. And that's all of the kind of crafting stuff that I was going to include in this video. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was books, because if you've been around my channel for a while, you'll know that over the last few years I've been trying to get back into reading and try and kind of increase the amount that I've been reading. And I was a massive bookworm when I was young. I would always have a book right up until I had my children. When I had my eldest, Arthur, 8 years ago, it all kind of went out the window and I didn't get to read nearly as much as I would have liked to. And then of course I discovered knitting, and when you're relatively new to knitting and reading doesn't go well together. But I've slowly discovered in the last year or so that I can actually now knit and read. I read on a Kindle, and it's brilliant because I can just pop it down and all I have to do is touch it to turn the page, and that works really well so that I can knit and read. I have to be knitting on something really relatively simple. I can knit on a vanilla sock, I can knit on something where I'm just doing garter stitch. As long as it's relatively simple, then I'm fine knitting on it. I discovered this weekend I can actually knit heels on socks and still read, and that has been a real help. So yeah, over the last couple of years I've been slowly trying to increase the amount I've been reading. I love reading on my Kindle. I know a number of people that just prefer a physical book, and I always thought I was one of those people. I always thought I was going to be one of those people that preferred a physical book, and then I got my Kindle and I absolutely love it. It's so light and easy to read. It's so light and easy to hold. I can knit while I'm reading because I don't need to hold it while I'm reading it. I can read in bed much more easily. If Tom wants to go to sleep earlier, it's got a light in it, like a built-in light, but it's really gentle on your eyes. So he can turn the lights off and I can still keep reading without needing to have a light on or anything like that. And it's made a massive difference to my reading, actually, my Kindle, and I love it. I love it so much. I used to read on the Kindle app, but I always struggled with that on my phone because, I don't know, the difference in the screen is significant. I've got a Kindle Paperwhite, and yeah, the difference is I just don't get eye strain with it, basically, whereas I was struggling with it reading on my phone. So all of that rambling to talk about the books that I've read in January. Now, I set myself a goal at the beginning of the year to read 20 books this year. Last year I read 17, I think, and the year before I read 12, I think, something like that. So I set myself a goal to read 20 books throughout the whole year. Now, in January, I've read 6 books, which is absolutely crazy. And I fully put it down to the fact that I have now discovered that I can read and knit at the same time. So I no longer have that dilemma of, do I sit down and read for a bit or do I sit down and knit for a bit? And normally sitting down and knitting for a bit would win in that situation, which means I wouldn't be reading as much. But now I can do them at the same time. So it's amazing. But I thought I'd go through the books that I've read in January. Because I don't have physical copies, because I read them all on my Kindle, I will pop pictures up here so you can see what they look like. But the first book that I finished in January, I did actually start this one during December, I think. But it's the first book that I finished in January, is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. And I loved this book. I was put off reading it for a very, very long time because so many people were recommending it and so many people suggested it to me, and I just couldn't believe that it would live up to the hype. So I put off reading it because I was worried I was going to be disappointed. But I really wasn't. I really, really enjoyed it. It follows Kaya, who is a girl who lives in the swamp, and she's left basically to raise herself in the swamp, and it follows her story and how life goes when she starts kind of interacting with other people rather than being on her own the whole time. And I can't tell you too much about it because it would definitely spoil the story to talk about it too much, but I really, really enjoyed it. I would recommend it to pretty much anybody. It was such a good book. There were tears at moments and there was joy at moments, and it was just lovely. The second book that I read this year is Wendy Darling by A.C. Wise. Now this is it's kind of a spin on Peter Pan, but you follow a grown-up Wendy, and you follow kind of her return to Neverland as a grown-up and the way that she sees it compared to how she was as a child, and the fact that it's not as innocent and as friendly as she remembers it being as a child and as we all remember it being as children. I would say with this one that if you are the type of person who struggles to separate stories from like retellings, if that makes sense, this could potentially ruin Peter Pan for you, because it definitely puts a much more sinister twist on the story of Peter Pan. But it was really, really clever and really good, and I really enjoyed it. And it was one of those ones where you were kind of reading the story and you were like, yep, I can see exactly how this spin could have been put on Peter Pan and the idea of children and boys that will never grow up and don't want to grow up, and kind of the possible kind of sinister notions behind that. And it was really clever. You also followed her across kind of 2 timelines. You followed her as a grown-up, but then you also got the story of what happened to Wendy when she came back from Neverland. And her brothers kind of forgot about it and grew up and everything, but she always refused to forget about it. And the result of that, and the result of never accepting, never letting people tell her that Neverland wasn't real. It was quite harrowing in places, definitely, and it was definitely quite a dark and sinister book, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was really, really clever. Then the third book I read, and in fact, actually, the 3rd, 4th and 5th books I read, I started with The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which is a sci-fi book by Becky Chambers. It's the first in a series of 4 books, I believe, and it's you know when you just come across a series that just grabs you? This was very much one of those. I love sci-fi in films and I love sci-fi in TV series and stuff like that, but I've never read a lot of sci-fi in books. And this was recommended to me as a sci-fi series that is quite a good kind of intro to sci-fi. It's not too heavy on all the tech talk. It's much more character driven. So it's more about kind of the people that are living in this sci-fi world. But basically within the world, Earth has been... we destroyed Earth, although it's still there. I can't explain it in fully detail, but basically most of the humans left Earth in various different ways, and they are now part of the Galactic Commons, which is a kind of organisation, well, not even an organisation, I guess it's kind of like a governing body kind of thing for all of these different alien species that have come together into the Galactic Commons and created a, I can't think of the word I want, not a community because it's bigger than that, but an organised governing system for the universe, I guess. And you follow, it's got such an amazingly diverse set of characters because you've got so many different alien species and they're not all humanoid, they're really, really different, and the world building is spectacular. So the first one, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, you follow a group of people who live and work on a tunnelling ship, and it's their job to build wormholes or black holes, wormholes between different parts of space so that people can travel more freely without having to go the long way round. And it's very much a case of found family and things like that, and I just fell in love with all the characters. The second book, which is called A Close and Common Orbit, which was the next book that I read, is the same world, but you follow different characters. So you follow the AI that was originally based, the artificial intelligence that was originally based on the ship that you had followed in the first book, and also a tech engineer, and you follow their story. So you learn about the AI who has now gone into a body, and she's trying to learn how to be in a body when actually she's not supposed to be in a body because it's illegal for her to be in a body. It's complicated to explain. And then you also follow the story of Pepper, who is the tech engineer, and kind of you look at kind of her story growing up. And the second one was a lot more harrowing in terms of her story growing up was a challenging story, but it was amazing. And I think I enjoyed it more than the first one just because of the different storyline was so interesting. And then the third one is called Record of a Spaceborne Few. And again, you're in the same world and you've got characters that are a little bit familiar, but it's a completely different story within the same world. And in this one, you follow the Exodus fleet, which is one of the ways that the humans left Earth. They built these giant spaceships called homesteaders where they lived, and they had communities and neighborhoods and everything that they could possibly have to kind of survive out in space with no intention of finding a planet. And it just follows the stories of a lot of different people, which initially I found a little bit of a struggle because there were so many characters that were kind of thrown at you at the beginning. And it's one of those books where you get a chapter for each character, and there were so many characters. I struggled a little bit to kind of keep track of them all. But once I did keep track of them all, I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting looking at, again, the world in a completely different way. And I really enjoyed kind of the story of the humans and how they've survived in these homesteaders and how they've found ways to make their community work within such an enclosed kind of space, if that makes sense. So they were 3 of the other books that I read in January. I was very tempted to go straight on to the 4th book, which I've forgotten the name of. To be honest, that's not good, is it? I was very tempted to go straight onto the 4th book, but then I thought, no, I'm not going to. I'm going to have a break. Mostly because I'm enjoying the series so much, I don't want it to end, and if I read the 4th book, then it's finished. So then I went on to something a little bit different. So the 6th book that I read is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. And I read, last year, I think, or the year before, I read another book by Naomi Novik called Uprooted, which was one of my favourite books of the year. And a couple of people recommended A Deadly Education because it's another of her books. It is very, very different to Uprooted. So if you've read Uprooted and you've enjoyed Uprooted, they're very different books. Uprooted was very much a grown-up novel, whereas I feel like A Deadly Education, it's kind of a YA series, and it's very different. But don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying it. It's fun. It follows Gladriel, who is the main character, and the idea behind it is that wizards in the world attract evil creatures who try to kill them when they're children. And so all the wizards created this school called the Scholomance, which all the children can go to, and they're meant to be kind of kept safe from all of these evil creatures. But it doesn't quite work that way, and actually, as they're going through the school, getting closer to graduation, a lot of them get picked off by the evil creatures that have managed to sneak their way into the school and grow within the school. And it's kind of basically survival, as in, you know, can she get to the end and get out of graduation through the school, and find friends, and yeah, very much kind of just a wizarding school with a difference. It's hard to describe much more than that, but I'm really enjoying it. And actually, I finished the first book in the series, and I've gone straight on to the second book, which is The Last Graduate, I think. So I did really enjoy it. It's quite dark. There's a lot of children dying, and a lot of monster attacks. So it's got a little bit of a horror edge to it as well. But it's really fun, and it's easy reading. And yeah, fun and easy reading, I think I will go with for that one. So there we go, the 6 books that I have read in January, which is extremely a lot. I've surprised myself with the number of books that I've read this month. So we'll see how February goes, shall we? It will be interesting to see. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my monthly roundup video. It's something a little bit different, but I liked the idea of sitting down and recording a little kind of roundup for the month and doing it each month. So let me know what you think, although don't tell me if you hated it. Just tell me if you liked it, because that'd be nice. No. Books. Have you read any of the books that I have read this month, and what did you think of them? Do you have any book recommendations based off the ones that I've read and enjoyed this month? And also, what projects have you finished this month? How many projects have you managed to finish this month? I'd be curious to know. Let me know down in the comments underneath the video. And if you haven't done so already, then please, please, please leave me a thumbs up. And if you've not subscribed and you'd like to, then do that as well. And I will see you again next week for another podcast episode, back to the normal scheduling. And thank you very much for watching. Bye.